right. Well, let's go ahead then and take a second step altogether as we are looking to deepen this work that is the theme for this year, which is trying to develop a real feeling for and eventually experience of the kingdom of God or the kingdom of the heavens. This fundamental aspect, if you read the gospel, that Jesus says he is here to announce and to bring, indeed to rule within. That he is a king and he has a realm in which he is the ruling power. And this feeling that devout Christians then have when they look around at the world and go, doesn't look like Jesus is ruling this world in a Jesus way. Doesn't look like that's happened. Or if he's doing it, he's doing a really bad job. Right? But we also know this statement that we said last time that he says in John's gospel, my kingdom is not of this world. The realm I rule is not the same as this realm. And that starts this riddle in the soul. Where is it? And how do I find it? And how do I enter? How do I participate in this realm where he rules? And he gave in many of the Gospels these parables as a way to meditate on imaginations that are drawn from the physical world to allow us to be able to begin in our earthly consciousness, while we inhabit an earthly body with an earthbound brain, he gives us things that we can think and picture that become a portal to that kingdom. Can be. This is the mission of the parables, that the earthly mind begins to be able to contemplate something that becomes transparent to his kingdom. And we are taking over these 4 sessions a little bit of a focus towards Matthew's gospel and picking up the way he describes this kingdom as the kingdom of the heavens. So there in Luke's gospel, he says the kingdom of God. In Matthew's gospel, it is the kingdom of the heavens. And last time we took a wide-ranging tour of this question and touched on some of the ways in which this is also a question that is alive and burning in our own age in various forms, both of a spiritual nature or of a more materialistic nature. The stars and the starry worlds and the beings that inhabit those worlds won't leave the news, and they won't for a long time. We keep being brought back to that. And today I'm going to try to see if we can take another step together. And what we'll start to do is to look at this question also using kind of grounding our work in a biblical approach. What does the Bible say, and how does it give us a bit of a picture of what these heavens could be? We'll take a second step with that next time as well. Yeah, so that is a bit of a review, touching on some of the things that we looked at last time. And in your email, Melanie Nason sent you all the words of a psalm, Psalm 19. And I want to use it this morning as a kind of review and a kind of prayer. So this is Psalm 19, a psalm of David. One of the things we can notice right at the beginning of the psalm is there are instructions. And it says, to the choir master. So the psalms are to be sung originally. They are songs, sung poems of praise This is the gathered community at the temple for worship, singing these songs out to the choir master. So if you want to think these pictures, try to picture them as I speak it through. Try to turn your hearts and minds to the starry worlds. Maybe there's a memory that you have from your life where the stars or the moon or the sun rising over the ocean or over a rocky a mountain landscape, where an impression of the starry world made a deep impression on your heart. That is where the psalmist will begin turning our attention there and articulating what is raying to us from that world. And then his attention will shift and it will move into the life of living with God's guidance, his moral guidance. So he's going to take us out to the widths of worlds, the shining stars, and then he's going to take us into the moral world within us and the word that we want to follow there. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. Day to day pours out speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. There is no speech, nor are there words whose voice is not heard. Their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them he has set a tent for the sun, which comes out like a bridegroom leaving his chamber, and like a strong man runs its course with joy. Its rising is from the end of the heavens, and its circuit to the end of them, and there is nothing hidden from its heat. The law of the Lord is perfect, reviving the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. The precepts of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The rules of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. More to be desired are they than gold, even much fine gold, sweeter also than honey and drippings of the honeycomb. Moreover, by them is your servant warned. In keeping them, there is great reward. Who can discern his errors? Declare me innocent from hidden faults. Keep back your servant also from presumptuous sins. Let them not have dominion over me. Then I shall be blameless and innocent of great transgression. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Wow. Almost 3,000 years that prayer has lived in human hearts, in human communities. this beautiful, beautiful prayer of David. Yes, that was a big part of the simple thought that you could say, took in last time. Where is God? God is enthroned in the heights of heavens. Indeed, if you look into where his throne is in the descriptions of the Bible, you will find above the stars, higher than the highest heaven. This imagination begins to show itself. There are multiple heavens and there are distances, at height beyond where the stars are, and that is where you will find God. So in the heights. And this cosmic creator being is the one who has brought about all that we can see with our eyes, hear with our ears, and touch with our hands. But he is also to be found in the innermost. Traversing the path to the dwelling of God is a path that goes through gates that go to an ever more inner chamber where there is utter silence, darkness, and there lives the name of God. I am. The center point of all things. And so we see in the conception of the biblical view of God, this imagination of the circumference and its center. God is in the widths and the heights, ruling the universe from there. And God is in the innermost center of all things, in the Holy of Holies. This core thought places also the description that I looked at last time, a kind of imagination in the construction of the Temple of Solomon. That at every gate, you first go upstairs and then go through a door and into a new chamber. And then you go upstairs, through a gate, and into another chamber. And those chambers are ever more inward the further you go. And these 4 core chambers are what you pass through until you enter the Holy of Holies. And that is where the name of God was to dwell. So today I want to look at this picture now from another angle. And we'll do it by looking a little bit at the Gospel of John at the beginning. And then we're going to need to take a wide angle lens a little bit at the context, the historical, spiritual context of the Bible. Can you see me okay, Eleonora? Do you want to come over here? Yeah. Sorry, sometimes the computer is blocking. We don't have a middle aisle. How about you, Heidi? Can you see okay? So a wonderful thing that you can do if you want to begin to explore this theme is to look up the word ascend in the Bible. And luckily, it doesn't appear that often. So it won't be hours and hours of your time. But the place that it appears the most are the Gospels and Acts. So if we look up the word ascend, oops. Ascend, to ascend. So in my little concordance here in the translation that the English Standard Version uses, it appears 6 times. 2 of those times are in the book of Acts. The other 4 are in the Gospel of John. So the word ascend in this form doesn't actually appear in any of the other Gospels in their translation. However, the Gospel of Matthew actually uses the same verb when Jesus ascends out of the water at his baptism. And that is this Greek word anabaino, this lifting up. But a translation actually of ascend, when you look up anabaino, then it comes 59 times in the Gospels and Acts. But you'll see why actually it's special to John that they would choose to translate it as ascend. So let's look back at that, what John is doing there. The first place that it comes is a reference that we should keep in mind throughout all of this work, and that is in chapter 1, at the end of chapter 1. And this is this very important story where Jesus is walking by. John the Baptist points at him and says, "Behold, the Lamb of God, who takes upon himself the sin of the world." By making that statement, two of John's own disciples just leave John and start following behind Jesus. Jesus doesn't go get the first disciples in John's description. John the Baptist acknowledges him, sees him, and understands him, bears witness to him. And that witness gives eyes to the disciples to leave and follow him. And then those disciples start going and telling their friends and gathering people. And there's this beautiful story of Jesus's meeting with Nathanael and Philip. So Nathanael is approached, and Jesus sees and recognizes him. "Behold, a true Israelite, in which there is no guile, no deceit." And Nathanael's never met him. How did you know me?" Nathanael said to him, "How do you know me?" Jesus answered, "Before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you." So he's revealing to Nathanael, you were in meditation and I could perceive you even though you couldn't perceive me. This makes a strong impression upon Nathanael, as you could imagine. Nathanael answered him, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God, you are the King of Israel." Jesus answered him, "Because I have said to you, I saw you under the fig tree, do you believe? You will see greater things than these." And he said to him, "Truly, truly, I say to you, you will see heaven opened, and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of the human being, the Son of Man." This is a most profound word to him. What is Jesus referring to Nathanael? Is there a story or an element from the Bible that comes to mind? Angels ascending and descending.
Jacob's ladder.
Who was that?
Me. Olive.
Oh, Olive was on it. Jacob's ladder. But what is Jacob's ladder? Sounds like something Jacob would bring to work. What is the Jacob's ladder story? Do you want to tell it, Olive?
I don't know if I have it living in me to tell it. It's
okay.
I have a really fun picture of the ladder and it lives with me, but a very, very shallow connection somehow.
You might not be alone. So we'll go ahead and go there. Let's go ahead and go there. I'm going to take us to the ladder. It is, if you have a Bible at home and want to follow along in your own Bible, otherwise I'm going to share the screen also. I believe Genesis 28. Let's see if Patrick actually is knowing this by heart yet. And which verse, though? Yeah, verse 11. So Genesis chapter 28, verse 11. So now I'm going to share the screen so everybody can come along at home and read it out loud for those here. Okay, share screen. All right. Everyone see that? On this very useful site called stepbible.org, which we use for our Bible study classes. So the scene that's happening is Jacob is on a journey to find his bride. This is very important for all of the other themes in the Bible that we won't get to right now. But his father, Isaac, has sent him to go home to the place where all their kin come from. What is home for Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Mesopotamia. So Abraham leaves Ur, but so if we need to kind of see the imagination of the spiritual geography of the story. Okay, so we have Africa, and Turkey there. Let's call this the Nile. And this the Euphrates and the Tigris. And here we have the land of Canaan. Generously large. These are not, I'm not a cartographer, that's not what we're doing. But you will see the geography is in an incredible threefold quality. Because here in Ur, we have those ziggurats that we were talking about.
You know, we can't see what you're drawing because you have the Bible up for us.
Oh, that's right. I did not know that. I was busy thinking you could see the drawing. Okay.
Sounded like you thought we were seeing it.
Thank you. I didn't know I would go right to the map right now. Okay. Can you see me now? Can you see the map?
Yep.
So here, then there, let's see, come on, little camera. Come over here. The region of Ur and the place where Abraham usually came from. And then he went up to here, to Haran, before he was called then by God to make the journey to Canaan. And there he had very powerful experiences, which probably we will get to. And then he spent some time in Egypt. And then he also came back to Canaan. So Isaac is there. Isaac's life is a little less dramatic geographically. He kind of stays in one area. But he sends his son to find his wife, just like he had, back here in Mesopotamia. So Jacob is on the journey to find his bride when this happens. And that is when the scene comes in, which we will now read. Chapter 28, verse 11. And he came to a certain place, and he stayed there that night. Oh, this is going to be a little more complicated here because I have the Septuagint. I'm going to take that out. Sorry. That'll just be a little simpler. There we go. Oh. Yes, Jacob left Beersheba and went toward Haran. And he came to a certain place and stayed there that night because the sun had set. Just, can you feel, you can't just read biblical texts without the feeling for the soul spirit permeating the world. There's such a beautiful pacing to this picture. And he came to a certain place. What is that? Stayed there that night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of the place, he put it under his head and lay down on that place to sleep. And he dreamed. And behold, there was a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven, or into the heavens. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and to your offspring. Your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west, and to the east, and to the north, and to the south. And in you, your offspring shall all the families of the earth be blessed. In you and your offspring, your seed is the word there, shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. That was the dream. So he has this dream. He goes into the night. He has a dream and he sees this, and you can see this word ladder, which we often have that translated that way because of our tradition. This word sulam occurs one time in the entire Bible. And so they've had to do deeper study of it. And what they find is you could also translate it as staircase. So sometimes that's why stairway to heaven is one of the things that we know. That's from this exact story. There is a stairway in the beautiful painting that William Blake did. He did a spiraling staircase showing these beings ascending and descending on the spiral staircase. And it's very hard to exactly experience because in the Greek translation of this story that was translated by Jews from Alexandria, it's very clear that the Lord is at the bottom of the ladder, leaning on it. And in the Hebrew, you can see it also. He could be at the top, and the top is the same word for head. So the head of the staircase is where the Lord is, or is he there leaning on it at the bottom? He's ascending and descending. In this movement, incredible movement too, right? And then he has this conversation and he hears God is planning to do something. The God of all of that.
You want us to see Wiccan, maybe? Or
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'm going to be coming back into these words though. Do you guys have a disembodied voice, no face?
yeah, we don't have, or maybe
We
we
if
just
you
have
have if you have your screen on speaker view, you should be able to see him off to the side.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
That's what I thought. Thank you guys. It would be very weird if you're just hearing my voice, just seeing the screen. Sorry. Yes, because I want to look at a couple of words here that are coming up just to review. So this picture of then a conversation and the God of this ascending and descending of the highest heavens and of the earth is working into their lineage to create something that is going to be a blessing for every people. This is a repeat of the promise given already to Abraham we'll look at later. But now we need to see what happens to Jacob when he wakes up. How do you process a dream like this? Let's see what he says. So now we'll go back to the text. Verse 16. Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. And he was afraid and said, How awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. The house of God and the gate of heaven. So what we know, and now I'll go ahead and stop the share. Through the archaeology of the last 150 years, we've been able to actually really go into also these areas, discovering the ziggurat of Ur, actually, which they couldn't find for centuries. They were looking for it. And they finally were able to find it and uncover it, and now you can visit this place. But also the old city of Babylon, and to discover how did they make their temples there? What did they call it? Well, they call it this. You would come up to these temples and you would see this statement about where you're coming. You are arriving at the house of God and the gate of heaven. So the temple and gathering place to meet God is simultaneously a house and a gate. A place where these beings should be able to come in and out of the earthly world. And what was it that Jacob did next? He took the stone, he stands it up, so he makes a standing stone, like the ancients have done all around the world. And then he anoints the stone with oil. It's the first anointing of the whole Bible. He anoints the stone with oil. In other words, it's the first Mashiach. It's the Hebrew word for anointed one. So when Philip is having this conversation with Jesus, what is he saying? You will see the heavens opened and the angels ascending and descending on, not a stone, the Son of Man. Another way of saying that is the offspring of Adam, or offspring of Anthropos, the one who will bring the blessing to all peoples. He's trying to let him know that the hoped for experience that Jacob had when he laid his head on that stone, I am that rock. I am the gate of heaven, the house of God. Or I am the true ziggurat. I am the true temple. He's headed to Mesopotamia and he has this experience. You're going to run into some temples. Don't worry. Those aren't the thing. Those aren't the thing. This first picture. So that happens in the life of Jacob, and Jesus picks up that image to show a truthful and devout Israelite who he is. I'm just going to pause there and to see if there are any questions or thoughts that have come up for that before we go beyond this first time we have this word ascend in the gospel. Yes.
I wanted to hear again what he said to Philip.
What he said to Philip. Okay, so what Jesus said to Philip. It's actually to Nathaniel. Philip goes and gets Nathaniel. He tells Nathaniel that he saw him. Do you want the whole passage or just the passage?
He saw him meditating.
Yes, under the fig tree. Yeah, this phrasing of being in his connected up place, under the fig tree. Yeah. From there?
Yeah.
Yeah. "How do you know me?" Nathanael said to him. Jesus answered him, "Before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you." Nathanael answered him, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Jesus answered him, "Because I said to you, I saw you under the fig tree, do you believe? You will see greater things than these." And he said to him, "Truly, truly, I say to you, you will see heaven opened, or the heavens opened, and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man." Guess what the next scene in the Gospel of John is? We should know. We should know right away. A wedding. The wedding at Cana. Remember Jacob on the way? He's going to get married. There is not a single thing in this extraordinary scripture that isn't woven together and related. It's so extraordinary. Because what would often happen also, so now we're going to see the spirituality between these two places. At the ziggurat, what we find are these staircases then that go up this one side, for example, with these thousands of stairs going up. But archaeologists have been unable to find exactly what was at the top. There aren't really, they keep thinking, well, it'd be there then that you would have another kind of structure, and that would be the temple, and you would go inside. But there's a lot of evidence in the stories and written records from this area of Mesopotamia, where what was to happen up here was the wedding of the king with the goddess. For example, in Sumer, Nana, I think is her name for the goddess of the moon. So the king needs to be wedded with the god. Remember the bridegroom story from the bridegroom language about the son who leaves the canopy and goes for a run in Psalm 19? That's very reminiscent of this kind of like some kind of canopy that was not a long-lasting structure, but could be put up or taken down. That would explain why there's no other architectural evidence, archaeological evidence of a structure up there. But this was the place of the sacred wedding between the god and the human. So that's also in the background of this simple story. He's going to find his bride, and he meets the true gate of heaven, the true house of God. And all of this is connected with our original picture. Well, let's come back to Egypt for a moment. What we know of the spirituality of Egypt is most famously gathered up in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And the Chaldeans and the Babylonians in Mesopotamia, what they are most known for is the something like the Magi's, which is this astral knowledge. So this ancient science of the stars, this orientation towards the cosmos, towards the upper world, reading the stars. So that's why we have this story in the Gospel of Matthew. The ones who can read the stars also will know when someone will be born. So the ones who are initiated into the starry wisdom in Chaldea have this connection with the birth mysteries. And so what's left over of that in our time is astrology in our newspapers. And what is astrology except what the starry sky looked like on the day and hour and minute you were born? It's a birth wisdom. So this pre-birth mystery that we come from the stars and that our personality and makeup is connected with the starry heavens and our destiny. What will happen is written in the stars. To know a person's life, you need to know it is all prefigured in the starry world. So this is the Chaldean tradition. In Egypt, we find this great interest then when, for example, in their Great Pyramid, you have these shafts going down into a chamber internally inside, deep inside this man-made mountain, with small shafts that many architects believe were not just air shafts, but were for starry alignments, for the exit of the soul after death. The interest in the Egyptians is the soul's journey after death. When you would stand in judgment before Osiris with the 24 elders, and then you would join, hopefully, if you were proven worthy, the ranks of the starry ones who are the eternal shiners from above. So their interest was the soul's journey after death. So in between these two, we have then the Hebrew people and their spirituality. And there they are given the law. Now, I know in our circles especially, that's not a popular word. We're like, the law, the wagging finger, right? Rather than moral guidance.
Rather than the law.
Which is the love rather than the love. The law rather than the love. Classic, right? I remember a dear person in my life saying, yeah, the great new thing that Jesus brought was he taught love, right? When he was asked about what was important, he said, you've got to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. But he's just quoting Deuteronomy and Leviticus, which is the law. I hate to break it to you, but the central teachings on love come from the 5 books of Moses that Jesus spoke. How are we doing? Are we happy? Unhappy? He didn't give anything new. He fulfilled the law. As he says in the Gospel of Matthew, I did not come to abolish the law, I came to fulfill it. And the law of God is love. Love. But the interest of that guidance, that spiritual guidance, and that orientation towards morality is not the cosmic starry worlds before you were born or after you die, but rather the life you are living on earth. And so if you read scripture, you're really struck by the fact there are these scenes that open up where Jacob has this dream and he sees the angels ascending and descending, but they break in and then disappear. For the most part, if you read Jacob's story, it's about a man having some issues with his brother, stealing his father's blessing through a deceitful act in the help of his mother, suffering the consequences of that later, becoming an older father and struggling with his brothers not loving each other, and so forth. It's a very earth-based story. But the interest all the time that the readers want us to have is, this is all a starry question. But it's the forces of the stars in lived life on earth, not before birth and not after death. The mystery of the moral universe that is coming into being on earth and can come into being in no other world than the earthly world. It's the new thing. It's the new thing. Morality. So there's a kind of threefold picture that is the entirety of the mystery of our ascending and descending as human beings. We come back to our, so if we have Israel here, and here that is the law or the Torah of God, which is interested in morality on earth, the spirit at work on earth. In your earthly biography, as if you know all the astro-knowledge in the world and can describe to me the secrets of the skies, but are a jerk This spirituality says you got a lot of work. It doesn't matter that you know all those things. Or if you've done all of the proper preparations for your mummy experience. Now, in the tradition of the Egyptian tradition, the morality was also important, very important. And that would be a part of the test of the soul, whether it was ready and could join the spirits above. But that was this interest. So there's this. So if we imagine that our image of the widths and the heights and the depths and the center to find where God is, then you have the pre-birth mysteries of our descending to earth, descending, and our after-death ascension to the stars. Then we have our human life on earth, our biography. That actually, for the recovery of the future of the spirituality of Christianity, we need to synthesize the mysteries of Egypt, Babylon, and Israel. We actually need to regain what the Magi knew, as the opening book of the New Testament says, only they knew that he was about to be born. Only they. You know who didn't know? The ones who were given the law. They didn't know. It was time. Only the ones who knew these things knew. That's a signal that it's going to become a time to integrate through Christianity, not separate. The Magi knew that he was to be born. The when. They didn't know the place. They had to ask Herod to get to the place. And similarly, of course, the mysteries of birth are to be understood also. We have to add a mystery knowledge that understands the soul's journey after death, going back into the starry world. And then the question will be, well, how do we understand the starry world's work in our lived earthly life? And that is where our creed in the Christian community calls Christ the Lord of the heavenly forces on earth. So the new kingdom of God is going to the focus is very much our life on earth, but in relationship to all of those starry forces. So let's go back into John's gospel just to connect this up to John, not where he uses the word ascend. Well, maybe let's stick with ascend for a second. There's another wonderful moment in John, and this is in chapter 6. It's a powerful chapter. Again, it will probably leave riddles in our souls, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. So this chapter is the chapter of the feeding of the 5,000 that all of the gospel writers include in their story of Jesus's work. When you are in his presence, you are nourished, even though the physical body for that food is minuscule. You feel full and satisfied by being with him. It's only in John's gospel, however, that he goes on to explain why. And he has this long conversation, and everyone's like, what are you talking about? I don't understand. It's classic John. He'll say these really strange things, and everyone's like, wait, so are you saying? They're struggling to understand. So he's interested in the cognition of Christ. And there he says, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Right? You're like, right? So you're like, that, the idea I have in my mind of what flesh and blood is creates a revulsion experience. So John knows that. He knows that, and he's going to describe what happens in all the disciples who are listening. For my flesh is true food, and my blood is true drink. Whoever feeds on my flesh and drinks my blood abides in me, and I in him. As the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so whoever feeds on me will also live. This is the bread that came down from heaven. Not like the bread that the fathers ate and then died. Whoever feeds on this bread will live forever. Okay. When many of his own disciples heard it, they said, this is a hard saying. Who can listen to it? His own disciples, it's not like his enemies. This is a hard saying. Who can listen to it? Listen to his response in verse 61. 61. But Jesus, knowing in himself that his disciples were grumbling about this, said to them, do you take offense at this? Then what if you were to see the Son of Man ascending to where he was before? Interesting thing to say. You think you're having trouble handling the wisdom I'm passing on to you right now. What would happen to you if you could directly behold the ascension of my being to this celestial abode? Apparently that would be more offensive. Meaning the word is more difficult to comprehend. More difficult to digest. And he goes on. It is the Spirit who gives life. The flesh is no help at all. The words that I've spoken to you are spirit and life. So let's take just a moment to ask, what are we eating when we're eating food? What are we eating when we're enjoying a salad, some bread, drinking a cup of juice?
In the grace it says, it's not the bread that feeds us, but what feeds us in the bread is God's eternal word, His Spirit, and His life.
That's right.
And we are only nourished by that in the food, by the Spirit and life.
So Chiron has just remembered this beautiful verse that one can say before a meal. It is not the bread which feeds us, but it is the living word of God that is at work in the bread. That is what actually, it is spirit and life. That's a reference to this exact passage in John 6. And in the bread and in the juice is something that has come from heaven. If I pick up only earthly substance, go outside, take some dust and put it in your mouth and try to eat it. I was a kid once, I tried. I don't know if anyone else. We had a phrase when I was a kid, God made dirt, so dirt don't hurt. Anyone else? I didn't pull off swallowing it though. It is not really something you can swallow. So we needed a being who could take that soil and lift it up and let celestial influence come in. Plants. Plants unite earthly substance with the forces of the sun and the moon and the stars. The only way humans and animals survive on the earth is because we eat sunlight and moonlight that has been transformed into leaves and fruit. And that sunlight and moonlight comes from the Word of God. The celestial ones who are pouring themselves out in the form of light. We all live from light. Unless you eat my light and drink my light, you have no life in you. Does it feel a little better? I am the light of the world. That's what he's going to say about who he is. Even to this very day, we actually only survive on the earth because of celestial food. And that celestial food can only be led back to this spirit source from which it came. And last but not least, in the Gospel of John, as we close this morning, he sums this picture up of the nature of the human being in his last address. These chapters in chapter 13 through 17. John 16, verse 28, he sums up this beautiful picture. I came from the Father and have come into the world. The incarnational stream. And now I'm leaving the world and going to the Father. This is actually the breath of the human spirit. We come from the celestial widths and embody ourselves. We live our life. We lay aside our body and we ascend to the celestial widths. This is the cosmic breath of human life. Indeed, it is also what we do with sleep, the little death. Each night in that breath. That's why Jacob goes to sleep and sees the staircase. Because you can see it there. Yeah. So much so for now to look at this theme of ascending and descending and to discover this threefold spirituality in which the ancient Hebrews lived, which we are in a parallel moment to in our time. And therefore we need to retake in what was given there in order to handle what's happening around us, I would submit, and we'll look at that more next time. But for now, it might be nice to see if there are any reactions, thoughts, questions, comments that are here present. And we have Lydia Marie. Yeah.
Well, two questions. The first one came when you said something about the world now, the world as it is now. How is it that I myself, who comes to the Christian community, who reads these things, who believes in the Spirit and so on, cannot understand half of what you're saying?
Oh.
And how does one then make it possible for people who don't know to understand? How can we change if it seems like a mission impossible because of that?
This will be, I'm not sure if everyone could hear, but I'm going to go ahead and say it again. So Lydia Marie said, so how is it that I am someone who comes to the Christian community and have for a long time and attend everything, and yet I didn't understand half of what you said? How could it be then we could ever reach anyone else if I couldn't understand you? Is that about right?
Something like
Yeah.
that. I'm speaking more generally.
Yeah.
How can we speak with others in a way that they will not reject what I'm saying? I mean, in that way.
The second question was, how can I speak in such a way that the person will not reject what I'm saying in that way because of a lack of understanding, or?
The spirituality behind it, because of where I'm coming from.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the second question I'll answer first just by saying, I go into this world to allow everyone to reject me as they please and to reject the spirituality I stand for. That's their right. But my job is definitely to articulate it well, and I may be failing at that for sure. That's on me to try to articulate it well and learn the language of whoever I'm talking to. But to allow them to reject it is very important. Very important. Yeah.
Isn't that one of the goals of the 3-year study that a group of you did way back? To find a language that is understandable to those around us who have no anthroposophy background. I wondered what came of that.
I'm not sure which study.
Well, you were one of the people on that research of the 3 years.
Rena's mentioning a 3-year study looking into the language used
And other things too.
to reach people. Is that right?
I'll show it to you later.
I'm not sure what she's referring to, but in any case, you could say part of what we've just done today is try to understand the language of the Bible, which is not our language. It's a foreign tongue. The biblical world is a foreign world, for sure. And the spirit world is a foreign land as well. Our whole language has been oriented towards this world and managing it. So it takes a lot to learn a new language. It takes a lot to get oriented to a new country. So I think of these things as the highest levels of trying to understand something very different than my normal life. So I feel very patient for the long work, personally. And it's okay if at first we're like, what in the world? I don't understand. And then we stay in it with each other. And I found if you stay in it, it is possible to understand it. That's the thing. I can't sit here and say, I can say I'm bad at teaching it, but I can't say to you that it is not understandable.
It's understanding the context.
It takes a long time to understand these things, particularly the starry worlds. Yeah. But yeah, please join in, everyone.
The Psalms, really going back to the Psalm where it just said, the statutes of the Lord are trustworthy, making wise the simple. I feel like there's something about that it's not really put on us to understand, like it doesn't take full understanding before Christ can be at work. And there's something, I think, of humility in that too, and of trust and all of these other parts of the Christian story that actually allow us to sometimes just receive. You know, he went to sleep and he received this vision, you know, that sometimes it's beyond our need to understand it.
Yeah, but apparently important to reveal.
Yeah.
And that's so interesting, right? It's like, okay, well, how do I start to take that in and live with it, just as you said? That's beautiful. Yeah, Julia, raised her hand.
Hi, Patrick. I don't know if you remember me. You stayed with me in Nashville, Tennessee when
Oh,
you
hi,
came
Judith.
to our visit. Hi. Well, you stayed in my son Nathan's room. So I'm going to bring something here because we're talking about something ancient and we're talking about our relationship to it. But we are in this time now, and there are revelations going on now that are coming into the world, not necessarily through anthroposophy or the Christian Community Church. And I think we have to be aware of it. And I am aware of a personality you may have heard of.
Hold on, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Julie.
I just wanted to give this as a reaction. I'm aware of a personality, and I'm following this personality, and she's called an Irish mystic. Her name is Lorna Byrne, and she sees angels. She can't read or write. She's been like this her whole life, but she describes this kind of a ladder as her experience when prayer happens, of how the angels tumble out of heaven, or they tumble up to heaven and they tumble down, and it's a similar description of what we just read about in the ancient time, but yet revealed at our time right now. I wanted to give that as a reaction so that we can also, I personally am helped by not just going back to the origins, but seeing, because he's in the etheric, where is he appearing in this anecdotal or in his stories that we know about going on right now with all of our lives on earth right now. I just wanted to give that as a picture for people about prayer.
Yes. I think Lewis was raising his hand, and then you two.
Patrick. Yeah, I just wanted to touch back on this picture you presented of these three, I don't know, impulses or perhaps regions or churches even of Babylon, Israel, and Canaan. And then is that perhaps can you relate these three this threefold picture that you painted to the what Rudolf Steiner described in his indications for the future of the three occultisms that are to be developed, and in reference to the three regions of the world? Is there any kind of cross reference there, do you think?
Yeah, that's a deep topic. I think you're referring to this lecture where Rudolf Steiner speaks about the birth mysteries that are known in the East and the star wisdom, the what he calls, I believe in English, the hygienic occultism in the Middle European sphere. So there's something with health and healing in the middle regions, and then mechanical occultism. He gives this name for the wisdom and spirituality, you could say, this initiation into the mysteries of matter, magnetism, and things like jet propulsion and all of the things that we have discovered in the West. So he tries to give us a bit of a view of like what will live there. Yeah, I think that's one of the windows you can go, and that's why I thought it's really good. You could say this is a kind of just a first map, and then you have to go back out into the world and begin to look for it. Another example is, for example, all of the near-death experiences that have just burst into the world in the 20th century. Just like this is, for me, one of the signs of the return of the Egyptian experience. And that has to, what is causing most of it? You have people on tables surrounded by doctors in lab coats who are able to bring them back to life. And that basically looks exactly like the images of an Egyptian initiation. And they have anesthesiologists that can control human consciousness, taking them in and out. Or why would it that in the most powerful country in the world at this time, that on their money they would have a pyramid with an eye on it, and at the center of their main capital city they would put an obelisk? Those are Egyptian symbols. What's going on? Or then in California, where the breakthrough in rocket science took place in Los Angeles, where they had the aerospace industry, not just Hollywood. There were individuals there who were seeking to have also the person, Jack Parsons, who actually had the breakthrough with the rocket fuel, was spiritually trying to do an incantation to bring in the being of Babylon. This is all just stuff you can know. You can go learn about it. What is our obsession with going up in rockets into space? So I think these are, once you have these thoughts, they're very helpful then to go back out into life and start to look for the signs of Egypt, Babylon, and Israel, and ask the question, what is their synthesized Christ-oriented version? Yeah. We have Irene.
I just wanted to add to what the other lady was saying about that there's something else other than knowledge. And I think of the Mother of God. How is this possible?
When she asks.
When she asks.
Yes.
Just full of faith, full of acceptance.
Irene is remembering the moment where Gabriel approaches Mary and tells her that she will give birth to a son, and she asks, how is this possible? And the quality of faith that she brings also when she says, may it come to pass as you have said. Yeah. Karen?
You could never go up the cigarette the way you showed it.
No?
No, it went it went round, and you could go even, on horseback. And the top was where the kings observed the stars.
That's right. So she was saying that you could never ascend the ziggurat in this fashion. the ziggurat in Ur, they found the staircases like this. There could have been there were many ziggurats that spiraled around.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But I think that was part of the intimidation by the staircase. You're like, oh, who can ascend? Who can ascend? Yeah. And then she said it was at the top that they would do their star observations. Yeah. William. And then I think that has to be our last one today.
What happened to Jacob was that God gave him property. And property and our relationship with property, of course, is at the very basis of all law. Our law today and the law back then, and the ways in which we discover ourselves, define ourselves, reflect ourselves in the property with which we surround ourselves. It is evident the moment you think about it, and it's also the most vexed of relationships in so many ways. So much of the conflict in our world has to do with conflicts over property. And sacramentalism itself seems to be an effort to change that relation, to transform that relationship.
Yes.
I would be hard. I can't say how, but it fascinates me that with Abraham and Jacob, that property, the giving of property, the receipt of property, as a defining aspect of the relationship with God, is so powerful. And you're right, we can't eat dirt, but without dirt we don't get plants that we can eat.
Yes.
That's about as far as I can take that thought.
Nice. That's great. Well, a true legal perspective from a lawyer. Thank you so much, William. But I think also that's key, because that takes us back to our first question. What is the territory, the land in which he rules? What is this kingdom? And what are its laws? That's when you ask that question, you're asking how is it, what is the lawfulness at work within that territory? And so I've tried to connect up to that same question. So next time we will really try to take a step to give some life to that starry world, so we can maybe start to feel a connection to it, to our lived experience. And hopefully, maybe it will become more familiar and less strange, God willing. I'll certainly be willing to try. Thank you all very much, and have a wonderful week. Yes.
Sorry, me again. Do you have a question for the small conversation groups, or do you want
yes.
us? Yeah.
Oh, I think you should just discuss as you feel inspired to do so. See if you can get some understanding in relationship to some of the pictures that were given, and wrestle with them. Yeah. Good. Okay.